Hola, queridos. Welcome to another episode of Latinas Who Lead. I'm Melanie Mendez Gonzalez. This episode's guest features activist, author of You Sound Like a White Girl, Julissa Natzely Arce Raya. Welcome, Julissa.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. So we're excited to have you back in San Antonio.
Yeah, I grew up in San Antonio. I came to the U.S. when I was 11 and moved to San Antonio, and I was here until I went to college, and then I went to Austin, and then I went to New York, and now I live in Los Angeles. But yeah, it started here. When I was walking to the book festival today, I walked by the Greyhound bus, which I used to take that Greyhound bus every weekend to go from San Antonio to Austin, and then from Austin to San Antonio because I would sell funnel cakes at the Market Square. So like walking by there and being like, man, I used to take this Greyhound bus every weekend to now like walking to the book festival and my book is here, and it's just like really, it's really amazing to be back where so much of it started.
So this is called Latinas Who Lead, and I created this series with the intent of showing not only ourselves as Latinas, but everyone else that there's no one way to be Latina, we're not a monolith, and actually our different backgrounds and histories and stories are what we consider a superpower. So tell us a little bit about your Latina heritage, Julissa.
Well, I'm Mexican. Like, I think like a lot of times people talk about, okay, in order to be Latina, you have to be these things, right? In order to be American, you have to do these things. In order to be Mexican, you have to like check these boxes. And I think that in my own experience, that just has not been true because I am Mexican. I was born in Mexico, but I grew up in the United States, which then my experience is going to be different from someone who never left Mexico. It's also going to be different from a Mexican who was born in the U.S., you know? So, like, I feel like my Latina identity and heritage and culture has been very much molded by, like, all these experiences I have. And also, I've been a Latina in Texas, in New York, and now in California. And each of those places has been a very different experience being Latina.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
I've only lived in Texas, and I pride myself now, after having been through Ancestry.com, to know that I'm a 7th generation Tejana. But I have traveled, and I can have a glimpse of what you're talking about, but have not lived there, and can only imagine how different it is, the West Coast versus East Coast versus Texas versus Mexico. Yeah. So thank you. So you mentioned that there is like this perception of what it means to be Latina. But let's have some fun. Tell me one thing that makes you feel super Latina, or one thing you do or don't do that could get your Latina card taken away.
Big hoop earrings always make me feel super Latina. Yeah, like I think big hoop earrings, I always, or like, I mean, right now I don't have my nails done, but whenever I have like claws on, I feel like a really Latina. And honestly, I don't think there's a single thing that I could do that would take my Latina card away, because my Latina card is something in me. Like, I am a Latina card. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have a Latina card. I am a Latina card. And so there's no wrong I can do that would get my card taken away.
Yeah. Gosh, I appreciate that answer so much. I love that. I love it. Well, your new book, You Sound Like a White Girl, is out now. I'm going to tell you the truth. When I follow you on social media, so I knew this book was coming. But like you mentioned before, you were from Mexico, you came here. And I thought, I'm sure it's going to be another great immigrant story book, right? I don't have an immigrant story.
Right.
So I was like, well, I like Julissa. She's a great writer. I see her, so I want to check it out anyway. I had no idea how much I was going to feel like you got inside my heart and my head, and then said all the things out loud that I have thought at some point in my life. And what I appreciate, I feel that the reason I connected to this book so much is because rarely do we, even as Latinas, get a book that centers our brownness. And that spoke a lot to me. So I wrote some things down, some notes.
Yeah.
And so I want to ask you about what maybe to expand on a little bit. So you start in the beginning of the book and say that in order to love America fully, I had to stop being enamored with it. What did you mean by that?
Yeah. So first, I just want to say, like, thank you for picking up the book, even if you felt like it might not have been a book for you or like that spoke to you directly. And I do think that there is, you know, I am a first generation American. I guess I'm not even first generation. Like, I am an immigrant, right? My kids will be first generation, second generation from their dad's side. And then there's, you know, you were just saying you're seventh generation, right? But I feel like no matter whether we just got here or we've been here for generations, there is still something that connects us. And to the outside world, they view us all the same. Yeah. Right. So one of the things in the book that I really push back against is this idea that all Latinos are immigrants, because clearly we're not all immigrants. But as a community, we always get treated as an immigrant community only, and I think that does a disservice to us getting the rights that we deserve, because we're always viewed as like foreigners. We're always viewed as like not America's problem. You know, when we are American, whether we just got here or we've been here for a long time. So I just want to say that.
Thank you.
To your question about what did I mean by that, so, you know, when I came to the U.S., because I am an immigrant and I came to the U.S., my parents had this idea that like America was the best place in the whole wide world, right? And that is something that gets repeated all the time, everywhere. Like this sort of idea of American exceptionalism. And my mom would say to me that the United States was like una casa ajena. It was like somebody else's house. And so we had to be on our best behavior when we were here because it wasn't our house, right? So we had to be on our best behavior, keep everything clean and neat, clean up after ourselves, you know, but in a bigger way. And I view it differently. I do view the United States as my home. This is my home, this is my house. And therefore, I need to notice the cracks in the house. I need to notice the mold in the walls, you know. I need to notice the things that are in between the walls, on the roof. And I need to call them out. Because it is my house, and I need to know that those problems are there in order to fix them. I think for a long time I did sort of think of America as sort of this best place in the world, and the more that I really looked more deeply into the issues, into how this country was founded, into our own history, I had to stop being enamored and see it truly for what it really is, and then try to do better, to make the house better for all of us.
That's beautiful. What you brought up for me, and even just this and in the book, was when I was reading it, first of all, you include tons of history, so thank you for that. It's like a mini Chicano studies class. And when I was listening to it, you know what, I felt like a little bit guilty. You kept saying like you're not going to assimilate, you're resisting assimilation, and I was like, well, I assimilated. Like we're here. Like, it's what I wanted, and then I immediately feel like guilty. Like if somehow I was supposed to figure it out on my own, you know. And so I love that with what you said about the house. I was like, and
you know what? Like I feel like guilt is like, I definitely have felt a lot of guilt for a lot of reasons in my life, and I've just come to the conclusion that guilt is the least productive emotion of all. And, you know, I think the book, like the first half of the book is about the lies of assimilation, right? And the second part is about reclaiming our culture, our heritage, our identity, our history. And so in many ways, I did assimilate in many ways, right? And then it was about sort of like decolonizing, de-assimilating, and filling those holes with things that were truly mine. So I feel like there's no guilt in it, like because we live within a system that forces these things upon us. You know, it's like we don't even really get to choose them; like they're forced on us, and so we're all on a journey. Yeah,
thank you for that. In the book, you do mention a lot of the census data and talk about the different parts of Latinos and who we are as a non-monolith, first of all, right? And so, and I mentioned earlier, what I appreciate is that you were centering the brown voice. And we have white Latinos, black Latinos, brown Latinos. So where do you see brown Latinos fitting into this narrative?
Yeah. Well, I think in order to answer that question, I have to back up a little bit in how we talk about race in America, right? And the way in which we talk about race in America is on a black and white binary, right? Our history is told through that lens. Race conversations live in that lens. And there's a lot of people who are neither white or black who definitely influence and should be part of these conversations because we both perpetuate things like white supremacy.
Right.
And also we are the recipients of the wrath of white supremacy, but many times we're not included in those conversations, right? And I think that framework then sort of is imposed upon the Latino community too, where so many of the conversations that are happening about Latinidad and the problems and the issues with Latinidad center on sort of like the whiteness in the Latino community and the invisibility of black Latinos, right?
Yeah.
But I sort of have found that like I'm neither. I'm not a white Latina, not in any way.
Yeah.
And I'm also not a black Latina. So like where do I fit into this conversation? Right?
It's like my whole life.
Yeah.
When I heard, when I
it's
heard it, I was like, she's talking about my entire life.
Yeah. Like and we must be part of these conversations because as I said, I think that there are a lot of Latinos, brown Latinos, who have tried to find proximity to whiteness as a form of belonging, as a form of protection. And then there's those Latinos who are like brown Latinos, like myself, who like, I know I'm not white and I'm not trying to be white. And therefore like, but I also, so I need to create my own space and my own identity, right? And when you talk about the census, like that's something that I'm very like passionate about, for there to be a Latino race within the census, because otherwise, you know, the categories are like black, white, Asian, and other. And so I always check other. And I feel like in that checking of the other, I'm like literally othering myself, right? Like I don't want to be another.
Yeah.
I want to be defined by what I am, not by what I'm not. And so I think it's important for us to have sort of this Latino race with the understanding that we're not all brown, we're not all the same, but I think that if people can check, you know, if you are a black Latino and you can check Latino and black, I feel like that actually more accurately represents your identity too. Right?
Yes.
If you are white and you're Latino and you check both of those boxes, that also more accurately represents, you know, where for like, you know, for me, it's like, I don't want to keep checking other anymore.
Right. Yeah, 100%. When we got my son's COVID vaccine, I let him fill out the survey or the information, and he was faced for that. I witnessed his first experience to go, wait a minute, I'm not white,
right?
But I don't want to be other, right? And so it's like, I appreciate your advocacy for that, because it is like, or you're bringing attention to it, because it's like, it is a real thing. And now we're going into the next generation, and it's still a thing.
And by the way, though, it's like, it's awesome to me that your son even questioned that, because I think even me growing up, when there wasn't like, and before there wasn't even another, you know, it was just like black, white, Native American, Asian. And so like, I would check white. You know, like my mom would be like, check white, because you're not black, because you're not Asian.
It's like, I'm not those things.
Right. Yeah. So like, but it's like, why then the default is white? Yeah. You know, it's like a lot to explore there.
It is. And so I appreciate what you do in this book. Because again, it's like, these are thoughts I've had. These are conversations that I've had with my closest friends that I feel safe with.
Right.
And you're giving us the opportunity to bring it to light with so many other people. So I want to wrap it up with another piece from your book. You said that embracing your Latina identity is a form of rebellion. Can you explain that a little bit more for us, Julissa?
Well, so it goes a little bit, so I'll tell you a quick story about the census again, right? Which is that Latino, Hispanic was not on the census until like 1970s. Well, with one exception, that in the 1930s, there was a Mexican category for race. And then that got taken away. and then we didn't come back on the census until 1970, right? When it was like this question about Hispanic, are you Hispanic, Latino, Spanish, et cetera, right? And then it wasn't until the 1980s where, in the 1980 census, where it was actually on every single census form, because in 1970 it only went out to some people, right? And I feel like, yes, a lot of that labeling comes from U.S. corporations wanting to market to our community, right? But I also think that it was our way of saying, it was our way of asserting that we had a unique identity, right? That we were our own people, that we were not white, that we were not other, that we were something, right? And that's, I think, was a form of resistance to assert our identity. Right? I find that speaking Spanish, to me, feels like a form of resistance, because you have all these people saying, this is America, speak English. So every time I speak Spanish, I'm saying I am American and I speak Spanish, right? And so I feel like all of these things about my identity, things like wearing big hoop earrings and people saying that's not professional, you know? It is professional because I am a professional. And so in all of those small and big ways in which I assert my own identity in this country, I am rebelling from the status quo. I am resisting assimilation. I am resisting white supremacy. I am resisting all of these things. And I think that in embracing our identity, and by the way, like each of us might feel differently about what we feel identity is, right? But in whatever form you are embracing your identity and reclaiming it, you are resisting. And you are very beautifully and powerfully saying, I am here, I am something.
Yes, that's beautiful. I don't even know what else to say. Everyone needs to read this book. It's so funny when I went to the bookstore and I was like, that's a book called You Sound Like a White Girl.
It's so funny. The title it's so interesting how, depending on your own experiences, how you receive the title.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I can only imagine. Well, yeah, because I literally have been told this.
Yeah, same.
You know?
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, yeah, we're going to go there and talk about it. And you totally went there and are allowing us to talk about it. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
And I know that the people watching or reading my blog, we have been having a form of discussion about what it means to be Latino. What is our Latinidad, right? Or Chicana, or all of the things, you know. And this is a book that I will refer to, I know, often, in continuing to have that conversation. You've given us a louder voice.
Thank you.
And I appreciate that. Best of luck to you,
Thank
Julissa.
you. Thank you so much. I'm so glad we finally did this. Thank you.
I know, me too. Thank you so much.